Okay, it is 12 o'clock. And for the time being, I think we'll just start. And well, let me give an introduction. So, hello everyone from YouTube or from webinar. I'm JJ, and I'm a graduate student from the University of Maryland, and I'll be the moderator for today. And today we have the event Maths Chat, a conversation with Tanya Garcia and Keisha? Is it Keisha? Sorry, Keisha Cook. Before we get started with the actual interview, I want to introduce a little bit about Girls Talk Math. So Girls Talk Math is a free math and media camp for female and gender non-conforming high school students. Francesca Bernardi started the camp in 2016 with Katrina Morgan, when they were both graduate students at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. In 2018, Sarah Burnett, who was a former UNC undergrad student, started a sister camp at University of Maryland. And this year we're hosting a special version, online version of the camp. And we have, we have two sister camps joining this year, UMD and UNC. And we have around 50 campers in total. And they will work with their respective groups to study topics such as patterns and fractals, RSA, encryption and cryptography, and many more. Additionally, we'll host 3 public events. Today will be the first of a series. To learn more about our upcoming events, visit girlstalkmath.com and check out the 2021 public events tab. So we'll start with the interview, and I'll let the speakers introduce themselves first, and then we'll answer some questions gathered from our campers beforehand. But if you're watching from YouTube, you can submit a question to the chat and we'll answer them. Okay, so Dr. Cook, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you for the introduction and welcome everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm Dr. Keisha Cook. I am currently a postdoctoral researcher at Tulane University in New Orleans, Louisiana. And I will be transitioning over to assistant professor at Clemson University in Clemson, South Carolina, in August this year. And this is a wonderful program that I just learned about before attending today, but I hope that you all get the most out of this program.
Very nice, thank you. And Dr. Garcia?
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be part of this group. So I'm Dr. Tanya Garcia. I'm an associate professor of biostatistics at UNC Chapel Hill in North Carolina. Previously, I was an assistant professor of statistics at Texas A&M. And I got to move during the pandemic, which was really interesting, but also really exciting because I have really fabulous students to work with, and I'm always very eager to work with young women and get them more into STEM. So this is fun.
Very nice. So we'll get to some hard questions from our campers. And the first one is probably the most common one that you get asked. So what first sparked your interest in math or stats?
I don't know who was. Yeah. So I always liked math. I grew up, it was always my favorite subject in school. Took the advanced math courses as much as possible. I knew that I also liked teaching as well. I have a younger sister. She's about 5 years younger than me. And I taught her math enough so that she could skip kindergarten. And so I knew I liked teaching. I knew I liked math. So it came together to be a mathematics professor. But I grew to continue to, learn math and was always interested in what's next. Like, what can I do with this? And I learned about math research during my senior year of college with who ended up being my PhD advisor, Dr. Roger CJ at the University of Alabama. And, he introduced me to the world of math research. And from there, I knew this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my career.
Yeah, I have a similar story to Dr. Cook in the sense that I was also always very good at math. I really enjoyed it. As a high schooler, in terms of choosing which major to apply for, I was actually between math and English because I did like writing, except I always found writing actually very frustrating because it was so slow, or I was very slow at it. And I thought, oh, math, like there's always an answer. And so there's logic. So I chose math, and I thought if I choose math, I'll never have to write again. And then lo and behold, as a faculty member, writing is still a big component of it. So that came back eventually. In terms of getting involved in research, I actually didn't know, even as an undergrad, I didn't know much about research. I remember asking a math professor, like, is there like a secret big book of, math questions, and that's how you get, a PhD and everything? And he just laughed at me, and I mean, not laughed at me, but he laughed with me, and he explained to me, like, it comes out of curiosity, out of questions. And eventually, even during my PhD, so I did a PhD in statistics, it was very theoretical, which I did enjoy, but I wanted to see this actually being used to help the world. I didn't see how all of the theory that I was developing could help, although now I do see that. But what inspired me was my last project as a PhD student. I got to work with individuals who are affected by neurodegenerative diseases, so diseases of the brain. And it was so inspiring to me to see how math and statistics could actually help people. And so I've been fortunate to continue that career.
Right, very nice. Yeah, one thing that I find a little bit frustrating is that when you look from the outside and into math, you just don't know how math could be applied to everyday life. And Dr. Garcia bring up a really good point. So Dr. Cook, can you introduce a little bit about what you do and how your work could be applied to daily life?
Yes, so I study stochastic processes, which is the study of randomness in a series of, let's say, events. And this also includes some probability. So what is the probability or the chance of something occurring over a certain amount of time? And so I apply this to the study of human lung cells and lysosomes inside of human lung cells, more specifically. So I am in math biology, and what we are interested in is the effect of enlargement of lysosomes in your lung cells. This is because lysosomes are the stomach of the cell, basically, and they intake particles or anything that comes into the cell, it gets rid of it or keeps it for cell nutrients. And when these cells grow in size or shrink in size, they have different effects on the cell. For instance, cell health. So if you're thinking of your lung cells are healthy, you can breathe well, and you're breathing in toxins every day. And how are these toxins being introduced to your body? And so because the lysosomes are taking in toxins and things like that, the enlargement causes them to move differently. And since they need to move around to do their duties, their daily job, we need to make sure that this enlargement doesn't affect your lung cells too much. And so from the mathematical point of view there, we're studying how do they move using start with the microscope. So looking under the microscope, we're fluorescently tagging the lysosomes with this green dye and seeing how they move around and tracking them. And we have these trajectories that basically look like squiggly lines throughout the entire cell. And the lysosomes are moving along what we call a highway of microtubules. And so if you can picture a highway and a car, we call the car a motor in mathematical biology. The motor or car is moving along this highway and at a certain speed, at stopping and starting and things like that. And your lysosome is attached. So let's say like a balloon that is attached to the top of a car. And that balloon is kind of like oscillating around as your car is moving forward. And so we're studying what that balloon or your lysosome is doing over time. And we can use different probability methods to infer or decide or predict what's happening with that movement. And then also we want to use statistics to then understand the different types of movement that's occurring inside of the cell. So long story short, we are looking at we want to understand cell health and how lysosomes affect cell health.
Very nice. We do actually get one interesting question from the camper. So you have introduced how you look at lung cells, but do they move fast? And is there anything that you find surprising while you're studying the lung cells?
So speed. So they're very small. You can't see it with the naked eye. You have to use a microscope, number one. So the size is, let's see, 3 times 10 to the negative 5. So move that decimal place back quite a bit. That's how small they are. And so if they're that small, then the speed is very small. If you're using miles per hour, I think that's about 2 times 10 to the negative 7 miles per hour. So very slow. But the way we capture them is over time frames. So we're not actually capturing every single movement. You are taking pictures at a certain frame rate and seeing where that lysosome is when that picture is captured. You put all those pictures together to have a movie of what's occurring inside of the cell.
Very nice. Okay, and for Dr. Garcia, I will kind of stalk you on the website a little bit prior to this. And if I get it correctly, you study data from the biomedical world.
Right.
And there is a really big buzzword relating to data nowadays called big data. And how do you see that word from your perspective?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I do think, personally, I think it's overused, and I think I do need to update my website myself. But I view it as basically we're collecting a lot of data, and how can we make the most use of it? And how can we identify which part of the data is actually helpful and which part is noise or just kind of garbage in a way. And so just to give you a little bit background in terms of the research I do. So we collect, or I don't personally, but I work with medical doctors who collect data on patients such as those with Huntington's disease. So this is a genetically inherited disease that eventually leads to neurodegeneration, motor impairment. So that means like they physically have difficulty moving, and also some other psychological and cognitive impairments. And so one thing that I'm really interested in doing is with Huntington's disease, because it's genetically inherited, if the patient is open to it, we can genetically test, will they develop this disease? But one of the challenges is, even if we know they'll develop it, we don't know when they will develop it. And it's important to know when it is, although that can be, I'm not a patient, but I could imagine that it's very traumatizing to know, oh, when would I get this disease? But there are a lot of possibilities for treatments. As nowadays, there's different clinical trials that are being run. And so from a statistician perspective, we want to try to predict when that disease onset will occur so that we can test different treatments to try to prevent that onset from happening or even delay it. And so in terms of the way I see that big data is, how can we take all of that data collected and nicely predict or accurately predict when that disease onset will occur?
Yeah, that is very helpful. I mean, with all the medical field, I know there is a crew part to it, but I think the more we study it, we could save a lot more people. Okay, and now let's move on to a slightly different topic, which is about the hardship in math. I know as a graduate student myself, I think the most fascinating but also most frustrating part about math is that you don't always know the answer. So that is my personal struggle, and I still struggle with it. So could you just talk about some of the difficulty you face during the math journey and how did you overcome it? Or do you still face it? And Dr. Cook, do you want to tackle this?
Yeah, I can tackle that one first. So I think, let's see, the difficulty would be not being able to find a community within math. So most of the time, I was the only woman or the only Black woman, Black person in the class, and just finding that community to work with, not necessarily, you want to work with all of your classmates, but just finding your group that you feel comfortable with just walking into a place, right? And finding mentors that also look like yourself, that you can lean on, that may have gone through the same type of struggles or difficulties that you experienced over your education. That's K through 12, and then also in college and graduate school. But instead of letting that bring you down, what can you do? So I created spaces for myself and for others. I joined organizations, and at the University of Alabama as a graduate student, I founded the Association for Women in Mathematics student chapter there. So, that just brought together all the women. And then from then on, there was an increase of women coming into applying to be in graduate school there, because now we had this space for women. We knew that women mathematicians were valued at the University of Alabama. Not that they weren't before, but there was definitely a space for that. And so that's a big way that I overcame those difficulties, by helping others as well. And then finding your network. So even though that network wasn't necessarily large at my current university, but I found organizations or joined programs such as this one, Girls Talk Math, and the EDGE program. So that was enhancing diversity in graduate education. And so having this network of Black women mathematicians that were outside of the university that I don't know if I would have met them if I didn't attend that program. So, finding your networks and your organizations that you can meet people who you can lean on for advice and for mentorship is very important.
Yeah, I completely agree with Dr. Cook. I definitely saw a lot of value and had a lot of support through different networks and building my own networks as well. I am also, as a Hispanic female in statistics, there's not many of us. So it's nice to go to these communities and to see familiarity there. I just want to point out a different aspect of challenges. So you asked about different, handling different mathematical challenges, and does it go away? No. At least for me, it's always present and always there. And I'm really now, as a team leader, I have really great students. I'm really focusing on helping my students, my trainees, also see challenges in a different way. I always imagined, I don't know, I always thought, oh, once I get my bachelor's, things will be better. Once I get my PhD, it's all gonna go, everything will be nice. Once I do my postdoc, once I get tenure, and I always felt like, oh, once I do this, then, the sun will shine, everything will be beautiful and perfect. And that never happened, unfortunately, but that's okay. Now I've been seeing challenges as, for example, like when I'm stuck on a proof or I'm stuck on a mathematical problem. Before, I used to tell myself, oh my gosh, how can I do this? I have a PhD and I don't even know how to solve this. That's so frustrating. But now I see it as, oh, cool. Like, I've solved challenges before. Maybe it's going to take me a day, a week, a month, maybe even a year. That's okay. That's part of research. And I'll just keep going. I've done this before. I can do it again. And that's why I'm really, really big on trying to train my trainees to have this mindset early on, so that, they're going to have their own frustrations, but at least if we can find other ways to tackle those, maybe they won't have this constant frustration that I had as a young researcher.
I don't think that's possible. I think you always have some sort of frustration in your research. I mean, I do all the time. And I mean, that mindset, I think, is very helpful to me personally too, because my research currently is going at a very slow pace. All right. And Dr. Cook brought up a good point about women minority in this math community, which is, let's be honest, very male and non-minority dominated. So you talk about some adversity, and recently, in the recent year, researchers have seen this kind of syndrome called imposter syndrome, which entails that female in the STEM field, they are doubting their ability and they feel like they don't belong there and they're just putting on a face and being a fraud by being in the place. Have you ever experienced any sort of similar feelings, or and if you have, how do you deal with it? And Dr. Cook, you want to go first?
Yeah. So I think everyone honestly will experience imposter syndrome, but it's again how you deal with it. So I didn't compare myself to my classmates or anyone else that I was, working with at the time because, everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. So I learned to, ask for what I needed, ask for help when needed. That whether that's your classmates or whether that is your advisor or going to your professors for help. But working with other students is, I think, is most of the majority of the time when you're working with other students, you feel the need to compete, you know, not purposely, but it's just comparing, oh, they already know how to solve that problem and they've already done it and I didn't do it yet. So that that can cause imposter syndrome. But, you want to figure out what's important, what's your own strengths, what are your weaknesses, because guaranteed the person who solved another problem faster than you solved a different problem faster than they did. So, using your strengths to help others that you're working with, and then or focusing on your weaknesses and finding those who can help you improve those. And again, whether that's your mentors, your professors, or your classmates, but not focusing on that comparisons and just succeeding by your own definition of success.
I completely agree with Dr. Cook. In terms of imposter syndrome, I mean, I experience that all the time. And I think even as you get another success, at least for me, I still even experience it. I just, a little story in the sense that, I think I've had comments given to me like, oh, you're only here at this university because you're Hispanic or you're female. We need the token minority person, which irritates me completely. But and that would, sometimes I did believe that, and that would bring me down. But then I actually did a calculation. I've had a lot of successes in my career, a lot of awards, a lot of fellowships. And so I calculated the probability of that just being random, just being because I'm happen to be the Hispanic female. And I don't remember the exact number, but it was super, super small. I earned this success. And so I think maybe I need to pull out that calculation again every time I have imposter syndrome, just to remind myself that, I did this. And so I think for all of the audience here, if you ever experience that, remind yourself of your past successes and don't dismiss any of them. They were not, I was just talking to a trainee about this. Yes, there's awards and mechanisms to support diversity candidates, but if they just wanted to give this support to any diversity candidate, they could just pick anybody off the street and say, hey, here's $40,000. But they don't want that. They want someone who's successful. And that's where all of you are part of that. So it's definitely a constant feeling. And another thing, I try to be very open with my team as well, because I share my own challenges, because I want them to know that, hey, I still experience that as well. And hey, this is how I'm going about tackling them, so that they know it's not like, oh, just because you become a professor, everything's going to be nice and easy. That's okay. Challenges happen, but like Dr. Cook was saying, it's how I respond to them.
Yeah, you kind of blew my dream there. I was hoping that once I become professor, everything is just rainbows. Okay, but I mean, I was watching how my advisor work, and since he is a academic, I watch how he works, and it seems like he's always fixed on the question. He is studying about the research 24/7. There is no personal time. So I just want to ask, what is your work and personal life balance, and how do you deal with that? All right.
Yeah, I've always had a good work balance, work-life balance, because I don't like to be stressed. And, that I think there's a lot of stress in any career that you choose, but specifically, I can focus on academia. There's a lot of different levels that you have to meet, different requirements, and like you just said, it's never ending. So once you become assistant professor, now you have to worry about the next step, which is tenure. So there's never really any pausing point. There's always the next level that you're trying to reach. But if you don't want to experience the stress like myself, I always make sure I have time for myself in the day. So starting my mornings by going to the gym. And that's kind of like a morning therapy session, and I can get my mind flowing with what I need to do for the day, and things like that. And then ending at a specific time, so making sure that your job is not your life, and that you have both. Because you want to enjoy your life, and you also want to do well in your career. So get the degrees, but make sure you're also enjoying your life, because you only have one. And yeah, it'll keep you sane and less stressed, so that you can perform better. The less stress you have, the better you'll perform on your daily tasks. And so just keeping some kind of schedule. It doesn't have to be, intense, like every hour scheduled, but just knowing when you need to block time for yourself and when you need to have specific time just to focus on your work. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do the same in terms of that scheduling. I wanted to share actually, so when I was doing my PhD, I felt that all of the faculty members around me were working all the time. And I even asked them, what's your secret to work-life balance? Because one of those faculty members was talking about how he enjoys traveling. And it really frustrated me, because he said, well, my partner, my wife is a stay-at-home person who takes care of the kids, and so I'm able to do this. And again, I was like, oh no, like I don't want to have to do that. There's no, I have no problem with people who want to stay at home and do that, and that's totally fine. That's actually what my own mom did. But for me, I wanted something different. And I actually worked a lot early on in my career as an assistant professor, to the point where I had burnout and I just couldn't work anymore. And then I had my first, I have two kids, a 5-year-old and a 6-month-old. And when my 5-year-old was born, I was early in my career, an assistant professor. This means the time when you're being judged, because once there's this thing called tenure, which basically gives you a job for life, but you have to go through these steps first before you get tenure. And so I was pre-tenure when I had her, and I was just thinking to myself, I can't keep the pace of burnout, like to leading to burnout, and be the mom that I want to be. And so I actually dove really deeply into productivity, and even read not neuroscience books about how creativity, how to be your most creative self. And over again, I saw studies, like I looked at the data myself too, about you need to rest to be your most productive and creative self. There's no way you can work, 18-hour days or whatever. I mean, I don't even know if people do that, and be your most creative self, meaning that you produce those high quality papers. And I think I initially did not believe that data. But after seeing multiple studies and then even trying the techniques myself, I realized, oh gosh, I can actually have a life, have fun, and do better work. And so, yeah, anyway, yes, there is a way to have that work-life balance. And I want to say this also, that it doesn't, initially I thought work-life balance was, okay, work 9 to 5 and then be, present at home the rest of the time. Sometimes that happens, but sometimes there are points in my career, like there's a big deadline. And so, yes, I will push myself during those weeks or months, But then to balance it out, I take months off, like I rest, I recover. So I see it as not, every single day is a work-life balance. I see it as, ebbs and flows, because when I saw it as everyday work-life balance, I would start judging myself like, oh my gosh, I'm working too much now and I don't have this work-life balance. But anyway, that's just another comment.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up an interesting aspect, which is the societal expectation on females, especially. I know since my family is fairly traditional, my mom, since I was in high school, started telling me you should have a family, you should have a kid, marry once you get out of college, and then you have a really happy life. But I never find myself, know, wanting those things. So I wonder if you guys have been told those things, and how did you feel about it? And how did you, well, try to be the one that you want to be?
I didn't experience that as much because both of my parents have master's degrees. So at least a master's degree was already ingrained in me. So actually, they were very focused on education. They always said, just focus on your education and everything else will come when it's supposed to. But that was my upbringing. I know everyone's upbringing is different. So.
Yeah, for myself, so I was born in Peru. I grew up in the U.S., though I came when I was 3. But at home, it was still very much a Peruvian culture, and my parents were also always encouraging the education, but they also did want grandkids and all of this stuff. So I did also feel that pressure of getting married young, but I didn't do that. I think. I mean, I guess I was the rebel or whatever. Like, I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And I think, I think we will always have those types of pressures, either, from family or maybe not colleagues are telling you to get married, but I think we get different pressures from different people. And I think, JJ, like you're advocating for is like really stand your ground of what works for you, because like Dr. Cook said, you only have one life, and so live it for you, not for everybody else.
Right. And I find that you need people around you and build a community, like Dr. Cook said, to support you in your own path. So I wondered, since I think you both are involved in advocating for females in the STEM field, and especially Dr. Cook started her own student chapter of WIM. So I wonder, especially for the high schoolers here, what do you need to do to start a community, and what is your starting step if you feel like you need a group of friends around you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So here in New Orleans, there's a program called STEM NOLA, and it's for K through 12 students. They have different breakout rooms, basically, and it's in person. It was in person before the pandemic, but every grade level basically has their own project or such to work on. And this is a monthly Saturday event. So for the high school age students, they had more advanced math type projects, which were really geared towards maybe we should say freshman level math research. So getting introduced to mathematics on an applied math level. So not just, solving equations, but what are you using this for instance, for biology, or for what Dr. Garcia is working on. And so from that, I think that it's just important, as a high school student, to find these programs that are in your neighborhood or, in your city that you live in, just to attend, whether that's a monthly event or that's something like this. But there are also a lot of organizations, I think, let's see, ICERM, ICERM, it's at Brown University. They have a high school program. I think that one's maybe a couple weeks long, and they do the same thing, starting undergraduate level math research. And what can you do with mathematics after high school. So programs like that will, fly you out for the summer, for a summer program, or for the week, or, but finding programs like that early on will help you get a good idea of what you can do and why you may be interested in studying math at a higher level.
Yeah, no, I agree. I grew up in California. So over there, they had a program called MESA, Mathematics, Engineering, Science Achievement. And I think that similar type program is actually likely in every state. So I highly encourage every high schooler here to apply, just like Dr. Cook was saying, and don't be afraid, even if you get rejected, just keep applying. Myself as an undergrad, I got rejected from every scholarship that I applied to in the first 2 years, which I think was over 10, but I kept going. And finally I got my foot in the door through a McNair Scholars Program. So this was in college, which was also focused on encouraging diverse students to engage in academia. So it just keep applying, don't give up.
Yes, finding a program is definitely helpful. Like if you're attending the Girls Talk Math program, you already got the the credit started foot already. Okay, and since we're helping high schoolers to fulfill their interest in math, we do have a lot of questions about school. So I'll start from the easy one. What math class do you find the most difficult in your entire education journey?
So I'm not gonna lie, I don't like that question, only because it depends on your whole experience, right? Because one class that I take could be different depending on who taught it to me, depending on what courses I took before that course to help me prepare for that course that I thought was hard. So I know you're gonna hate me, but I'm not gonna pick a subject because everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, but every course has its own challenges. And as long as you have, a classmate to work with, or go talk to your professor, or outside resources. I mean, now resources are there's so many more resources available for you to figure out the challenges in all these courses today, that you will be able to succeed in the class.
Yeah, so I guess I'll answer it in the sense, so I started my undergraduate career as a math major. I finished as a math major, but so I went to UC Irvine, which was on a quarter system. So there's 3 quarters in a year. And my first 2 quarters, I had horrible math professors. Like they didn't really care. I mean, at least I felt like they didn't care about teaching the subject well, unfortunately. And I told myself, if in the 3rd quarter I don't have a really inspiring professor, I'm going to change, because it was too much of a struggle for me. I went to the tutoring, I went to office hours, but it just didn't help. And then thankfully that 3rd quarter, I met a professor who he loved math and he inspired me. He was the hardest professor in the department. He only gave out 1A every quarter. I don't know why, but that was his policy. But I loved his classes so much because he broke things down. He taught to my level. And so I ended up signing up for every single class I could with him, just because I knew that I would feel inspired and challenged. And he did change that rule. I think university kind of got mad at him. But so anyway, so I ended up doing well in those classes. But I agree with Dr. Cook. I think, finding those resources that you want, and also not being afraid to even speak up to the faculty, that, hey, I'm having trouble here. What can I do to get help?
Right. I find voicing out your concerns at the minute is the most helpful during my studies. And Dr. Garcia talked about what kind of inspires you and puts you into this path. So can we talk about what inspires you along the way? What made you think I want to have this career that you're currently having?
Yeah, of course, my family was first. They were always saying, encouraging me to continue to do whatever I enjoyed. And so with regard to mentors, I had a lot of great mentors along the way. And so my first one for the PhD, my PhD advisor, Dr. CJ at University of Alabama, he was my first mentor and inspiration, because he introduced me to math research. I took a course with him my senior year, and like Dr. Garcia was just saying, he broke down everything. It was it was a different way of learning that topic. I believe it was complex analysis, and yeah, and I enjoyed learning about it. So I said, okay. At that point, I just said, oh, I'm going to get a master's degree, because again, I knew that was already in the cards for me. But he then said, well, have you thought about a PhD? Because, you're always asking all these questions, and, you would be a great professor, because you ask these questions, or in a good researcher, because you're interested in what it is we're studying. And so from there, I began the PhD program, and that same summer I met Reagan Higgins. She's at Texas Tech University, and then Amy Radenskaya, who is at Pomona, I believe, but she was president of the Association for Women in Mathematics at the time, and the director for the EDGE program. And so the two of them were two of my biggest mentors throughout the PhD program, and still today I talk to them about what's next, and am I on the right track, or is this right, or just asking them about their experiences that they've gone through throughout their academic career so far, and they have been very helpful and very inspiring also.
Yeah, so for me, and I think what I'm going to say addresses one of the comments in the chat. So I always loved math, and I wanted to go as far as I could, and I knew I could, but there were still doubts throughout my career. So for example, in my last year as a PhD student, I didn't think I wanted to become a professor. I thought, as I said, all of my professors worked all the time. I thought, that's not the life for me. I want to have fun. And I did an internship the summer before the year I was going to graduate. And I thought, oh, this internship, it's going to be the one, like, this is the career I want. And then it turned out to be so boring to me. And I was so disappointed, like, oh my gosh, now what am I going to do? Because still at the time, I didn't know if I wanted to become a professor. And I had gotten a postdoc position. So I just said, you know what, I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to advertise on the outside that I'm going to do academia, but on the inside, I still don't know if this is really for me. The first day of my postdoc, I guess I want to just be open that I had a lot of confidence issues throughout my career, and still this is something that I'm working on, and that's okay. But the first day of my postdoc, I cried because I thought, I don't know how I'm going to succeed in this. I felt like everybody else was so much smarter than me, and I don't know what I'm going to do, all of that. And I just I remember I talked to my husband then at the time. We had just got married, and he said, you know what, like, just take the money, like, do the work, take the money, we'll figure something out after. And like Dr. Cook was saying, what happened was I had a really, really great postdoc mentor who showed me, like, he gave me projects, and I could solve those problems, and he kept encouraging me, and it was genuine compliments, and he showed me like how capable I am. And in that post, I guess just to brag, like in that during that 11-month postdoc period that I had, I produced on my own 4 manuscripts from scratch to the end, submitting, and I also got a tenure track position. So I showed myself, like, yes, I'm capable, and I think I needed that support, that external mentor to lift me up, to show me, yes, I'm capable. And now, you know, I'm trying to do that with my mentees. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and Dr. Cook, did you, well, you're very young in your career, so in the very young career, have you ever thought to switch path, maybe go more into the biomedical field and less about the mathy stuff?
I stuck to math and staying in academia because, to be honest, I did not want an office job. I like academia because you have a level of, you know, intellectual freedom that you can, you know, choose what you want to work on and what you enjoy. And, you know, your projects are your projects and you have your students. And I really enjoy mentoring, like Dr. Garcia was saying. Once having great mentors inspired me to be a great mentor for those who are interested in mathematics, you know, from you all that are attending today, and then the graduate students and the undergraduate students that I'll have in the future, that I have now and will have in the future. So, yeah.
Nice. All right. I think a lot of the girls who are good at math, they are also good at other STEM area, and they don't know which path to go once they enter college. And since today we have two, well, kind of biomath combined professors here, I wonder what course or what classes do you recommend for them to take, well, either during college or prior to college even, for them to kind of broaden their view and sort of decide what they want to do?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, I knew that I liked math and teaching, but I didn't know what I was going to do with math until my senior year of college. And so, you know, I took as many of the courses, the math courses as possible. I know if you choose a math major, there are specific courses, you know, outlined in that you have to take. But when you see special courses that are offered and you're an undergraduate student, maybe there's also the opportunity to take some graduate level courses as long as you have the prereqs, and they can be what they call special topics courses or maybe seminars, depending on the university's terminology. But these courses will allow you to get more in depth with the mathematical research type and different projects of mathematics instead of the standard core courses. So yeah, I would suggest staying on track with your core courses first, and then when you have extra time, adding in those special topics. Yeah, and they can be with good professors that are, you know, fun to work with, and that will inspire you to figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think I just encourage you when you start college to, you know, yeah, not be afraid to try out different classes, even outside of math. I remember, so most colleges and universities, they have the first 2 weeks, I think, is you can try out different classes and then you have to settle on a schedule eventually. But I would, you know, that those first 2 weeks, the homework isn't so bad or it's lighter. So I would just encourage you to sit in on a couple classes just to see if it's interesting or not. I do agree with Dr. Cook, though, that you do want to stay on track because unfortunately there is a time limit on how long you can be in university. But yeah, just explore.
Yeah, also the financial aspect of college is a huge part. I know when I was applying to colleges, it kind of hindered my application process because I was thinking about how much the tuition costs. So we do have some question about scholarships and wondering if you can recommend some. And well, in my humble being, I'm gonna suggest some to start with. So while I was applying to college, each college, I will look through their scholarship page, and if they're open, I will just apply. No matter, well, if I'm going to get rejected or not, because a lot of the applications, they require the same thing, the recommendation letters and the personal statement. So you can reuse a lot of them. So that's my suggestion. And I think you two probably have more better suggestions.
No, that was actually going to be my suggestion. I know that there may be other opportunities if you look for math programs such as this. So at other universities or just externally, they may have scholarships available if you attend said math program or summer school that you're interested in. And that's the only other thing I can think of regarding undergraduate scholarships.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I mean, if you Google search, and you're going to find a lot of opportunities, but I'd also highly encourage everyone to try to find, don't be afraid to ask or look for mentors to help you read those applications. Like I said earlier, I had applied for, I was one of the poor students as an undergrad, and I graduated in 3 years purposely because I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford more than that. And what helped, but in those first 2 years when I was applying for scholarships, I didn't get any. And then finally, I just kept asking different faculty members, like, would you read my work? And finally, I found one who helped me a lot. He was the harshest critic of my work. And at first, he put me in tears because I thought, this is so horrible. But it was a huge turnaround. After that, I got scholarships. So we still keep in touch. He's one of my favorite people. And so, yeah, so don't be afraid to ask for help and ask for the harshest critic.
Yeah, actually, I find that very, very interesting because that's something I'm still afraid to do, because I'm still afraid when I first talk to the professor and ask, what do you think of this? Or ask him to be my mentor. So, well, how do you build yourself mentally to prepare for that? And how do you prepare for the criticism that might have come after that?
So with respect to talking to professors, and I think that professors that are good mentors will always have an open door, and they'll be ready to listen. They'll be ready to, just listen if you just want someone to listen, or give advice if you would like advice too. However, I think you have to find the right person to go to. Number one, you want to make sure that professor is someone that you can actually count on for the type of advice or mentorship that you would like, and that there's a good relationship there, so that it is positive. So that's a positive experience from both ends.
Yeah, no, I think for myself, what helped so I was not afraid to go to office hours. And I think I don't know why I made it my goal to try to go to every professor's office hours every 2 weeks at least, and just for them to see my face. And you will very quickly get a feeling of who actually wants you there and who wants you to get kicked out, and that's okay. Like even that, I kept staying because whatever. But I think in terms of, so you'll get a feeling of which faculty really are interested in that kind of mentorship. Another thing is, when I asked for help, I was always very, very mindful about their time. So I prepared everything in advance, gave them ample time to review, always followed their deadlines, not mine. So if the deadline was 3 months away, I said, oh gosh, I got to get started now so that I can give them at least a month of review, because who knows their schedule. And so that gave that helped build a reputation of me as a student. Like I'm someone who respects their time, and that went a long way with different faculty members. And in terms of being ready for those critiques, honestly, like, it still happens and I still cry like that when people critique my work. But I mean, I've gotten so used to it. I've conditioned myself to say, hey, like, this is what I want. Like, I want to up level. I want to do better. I want this money. I'd prefer that someone red mark my work now so I could get the money rather than someone rejecting me for the money. So anyway, I think it's just conditioning yourself, and yeah, there's still tears, but that's okay.
Right. And I think a good point that you brought up is that in order to ask for other people's help, you need to be thankful, you need to be grateful and be considerate. Because, well, I'm still a graduate student and I've been a TA for like the past 2 years. And what I find the most comforting is for students to think of you when they ask you for help. Like if they want to ask you questions, they want to schedule an appointment instead of ask straight, can you meet with me now? So I think that's just a good tip to go along your life. Just be considerate of other people and other people's time. Okay, and now we have some fun question. So if you were to travel back in time and you meet your high school self, and let's not worry about the grandfather paradox, so nothing you say is going to change who you are right now, what would you say to your old self?
I would say to to explore more sooner. So I think that if I had actually taken my advice that I gave you today about finding programs that are such as this program today to better understand mathematics at a deeper level earlier, then I would have figured that out sooner, and just had more time to develop what I wanted to do mathematically. I'm not saying that I don't enjoy what I do now, but had I done it earlier, it would have been nice.
Yeah, I think maybe with the theme of confidence, just I would tell myself, you got this. You're gonna have challenges, but you've had challenges before and you've overcome them, and that's how you're gonna grow. And so yeah, because I'm a perfectionist, and so sometimes it's hard when it's not perfect, but it's through those challenges that I've found the most growth and I've had the most fun. So
right. And I know that high school is probably closest to me, but if I were to travel back in time and try to say something to myself, and I would say just be you. Like just stay you and you're gonna do great in the future. And I think everybody here should have that confidence. Just continue your path, be yourself, and you will have a great future no matter what. All right, and I think we're about time, and let's see if we have more questions. All right, we do have a question from a anonymous attendee. What were the programs that Dr. Garcia mentioned early in the discussion? She said every state has one.
So it has different names, but in California, it's called MESA, MESA, Mathematics, Engineering, Science Achievement. But if you look for, I guess, if you were maybe Google search mathematical programs for diversity groups or for women, like those two different searches, things will pop up.
All right, so I send one answer. Yeah, and Google is great. Google is great when you're trying to find resources. Just ask Google, okay, what is a program I can attend in this state? And Google will tell you. All right, any other questions? All right, I have one. So I know that for the past year, we have all been online. So how do you deal with this online setting so far?
At the beginning, it was more stressful, I think, than now, because you're, learning how to manage now, having meetings more readily accessible and more often than you would actually have meetings when you're in person. But now it was actually fun learning how to teach virtually, how to develop a way for students to still be interested when they can really just watch the recording of the lecture. And so making the course, I taught probability and stochastic processes. So making that fun so that they want to attend live and they want to be involved in the course as we're going along. But adapting, it's been an experience.
Yeah, I have a similar things to say, like Dr. Cook, just, yeah, being flexible, being forgiving to yourself also when hiccups occur. And I just wanted to say, I still haven't met any of my colleagues yet or my students. And so I'm like so excited to get to meet my students and my colleagues for the first time, but I think more of my students, because I don't know, I just really love them. So yeah, it's like meeting friends for the first time.
Yeah, that's exciting. Hopefully in the fall, everything will go back to normal. All right, I think that's time. And thank you everybody for coming. And thank you to Dr. Cook and Dr. Garcia for such a amazing interview. And yeah, I hopefully will see you next Saturday with more events coming. All right, and bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Actually, if I can just say one more thing, if for any of the participants, if any of you want to reach out, please feel free to reach out. You can Google search me. I'm at UNC Chapel Hill. I'm always happy to talk to young people, get them into STEM and get them to stay. So please don't hesitate.
Definitely. I echo that. Yes.
I think if you search Tanya Garcia, besides the TV show star,
oh yeah,
you're the first thing that comes up.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think there's a Filipino star. I'm not that person, but all right.
I was
Awesome.
wondering for a second.
Thank you so much.
All right,
Take care.
thank you.
Bye.
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 Nice rest of the weekend.
You too.